Drug dealing is one gigantic occupational hazard. I think I always knew that deep down, but in our youth we feel invincible. It doesn't matter if you carry a Glock or a rocket launcher, the Grim Reaper eventually collects his dues. For drug dealers, death usually comes earlier rather than later. Still, it's natural to think the rules don't apply to you. That guy who got his head blown off in a drug deal gone bad? Couldn't possibly be me. I'm quick on the draw. That one girl who wasn't hauling in the profits her boss wanted, then got switched into prostituting? I'm not a woman, so I'm in the clear. Those junkies who had their own little French Revolution rose up and decapitated their neighborhood dealer like he was King Louis XVI. We work in twos now for that very reason. And the junkies responsible were skinned alive to make an example. No chance in hell that history will repeat itself. But I was wrong. Like I said, drug dealing is one gigantic occupational hazard. Any number of things can happen. What happened to Falk, though? I didn't see it coming. There's no way I could have. Something like that is damn near impossible to wrap your head around. Monday through Saturday, Falk and I went to our alley on the harbor and dealt drugs. As Falk's understudy, I was responsible for packing dinner. Falk was responsible for teaching me the ins and outs of managing unruly skells. That's what Falk called our junkie clientele. I looked it up once. Urban Dictionary defines skell as a lowlife, non-bill paying, possibly crack or heroin addicted being. We dealt a lot more than crack and heroin, but the low-life, non-bill paying part summed up the people who Falk and I sold to almost perfectly. The rainy night that everything fell to shit, a Friday, Falk had just finished beating a skell within an inch of his life. Falk was fucking huge. When he wasn't dealing, he was either lifting or pounding the heavy bag in his boxing gym. His arms looked like tree trunks. The dude Falk had just finished beating the shit out of now had a face that resembled raw hamburger. Falk dragged him by the scruff of the neck to the mouth of the alley we dealt from. He called in the hearse, and then we waited for them to pick the guy up. That's what we called the black sedan that prowled our territory, the hearse. On the other side of tinted windows were high-level lieutenants of the Kingpin. I'd never met the people inside the hearse, nor had I met the dude who ran the whole operation. Falk said I would eventually if I kept up the good work. After the hearse picked up the half-dead skell, Falk jogged back to our spot, excited as a kid at recess.
What do we got? What do we got?
He asked, rubbing his hands together like he was warming them over a fire. It was dinner time. I grabbed my plastic lunch pail and pulled out that night's meal.
You sneaky little devil,
said Falk, laying eyes on it.
My favorite.
I'd made 2 peanut butter sandwiches on Wonder Bread. I'd also packed 2 snack-sized bags of Fritos, 2 Cokes, and a large Ziploc bag full of apple slices, sprinkled with cinnamon and sugar.
You remind me of my mom,
said Falk.
I feel like a schoolboy all over again.
He took his sandwich and unwrapped the cellophane. He lifted one piece of bread, inspecting it. I noticed Falk's knuckles. They were gummed up with the junkie's blood. Pink valleys were torn into the flesh, thanks to repeated contact with the junkie's now missing teeth.
You know me too well,
Falk said, shooting me a coy smile.
Creamy peanut butter or bust.
I cut the crust off too.
Hey, I was about to mention that. I notice you, man. You'd think I don't.
Although I'd warmed up to him over time, Falk still scared the shit out of me. When he wasn't pissed off, he was gentle as a teddy bear. When he was mad, he was violent as a grizzly in heat. Every night before going out to the harbor, I said a little prayer that I wouldn't fuck up and end up on the wrong side of his boulder-sized fists. Dudes who beat skells half to death, then eat their crustless white bread creamy peanut butter sandwiches like nothing happened, Suffice it to say, they make an impression on you. We ate dinner, sitting on the curb like we always did, talking about Netflix. Falk had become a huge fan of Bridgerton. His favorite character was Eloise. He said she'd have been his choice if he lived in Regency-era England during the season where debutantes are presented at court. I thought of telling Falk that if somehow we managed to time travel across the pond to the early 1800s, we wouldn't have been royalty. There were dudes who fucked up skulls and dealt drugs back then, too. But I decided against ruining his little fantasy. I let him tell me more about how his type of chick was sarcastic, cheeky, and most importantly, brunette. Various clientele came down the alley to pick up drugs. Every time, Falk sent me jogging to the drop spot to grab their fixes. Heroin, coke, meth. We had it all. But a few of them asked for the special sauce, or the sauce as it was called. It was a new drug on the street, a powerful hallucinogen that supposedly packed one hell of a body high. As the adage goes, a dealer never dips into his stash, so I'd never tried the shit myself. But I couldn't deny that I was intrigued by what people said about it. The sauce came in little Ziploc packets. It looked like the gooey gel inside cold packs, the kind they used in boxed dinner kits. Legend had it among the dealers in our network that a batshit oceanographer had discovered the sauce. He found a new species of deep-sea jellyfish. Then, for some unknown reason, he licked the fucking thing. But he got high as balls, his body thrumming like a rogue vibrator, his mind transported to wondrous otherworldly vistas. Realizing the sauce was the best thing since fried rice, he figured out a way to harvest the shit and sell it to the cartels who supplied drugs to the likes of Falk and me. Someone heard the legend from someone, who heard it from someone else. Dealers spent a lot of time talking. Standing in a cold, wet alley gets dull real quick. We're chatty as a group of cat lovers in a sewing circle. But business was booming. The sauce, Skells fucking loved the stuff. Falk and I kept talking about Netflix shows long after we'd finished our cinnamon sugar apple slice dessert. Given that Falk was about to run out of Bridgerton episodes, I told him that The Crown was similar, if somewhat less steamy. Then two people showed up at the mouth of the alley, interrupting our conversation. Even at a distance of 50 yards, even through the buckets of rain dumping down from swollen clouds overhead, I could see that they were shaking.
"Oh, Jesus fucking Christ,"
said Falk.
"I need these motherfuckers like I need a hole in the head."
We both had radars for addicts with the shakes. It meant they hadn't had a fix in a while. Could have been due to poor planning. Could have been due to not having any money. Desperate addicts, in my experience of dealing drugs, are almost always trouble. As the Skells came closer, I noticed that it was a guy and a girl, maybe in their mid-20s. They were wearing raincoats with the hoods pulled up, but their faces were slick. It couldn't have been rainwater due to their hoods, so I chalked it up as sweat. But as they came closer, I saw that the shit on their faces was glassy, like their skin had been smeared in hair gel. Falk stood up. I stood up too. As the Skells came closer, I noticed a rotten stench about them. Their heads looked large and swollen, like sponges soaked in water overnight. I noticed that their eyes looked strange too. Milky, almost blind like the eyes of dead fish. "That shit you gave me," yelled the guy, his voice trembling. "The sauce. It fucking fucked me up, man. You gotta help us." Falk shook his head, then he cracked his knuckles.
"Wrongo,"
he said.
"I don't gotta do shit. You need to head back out the way you came."
The girl looked even sicker than the guy. Something was leaking through her pants. I thought it was piss at first, but then I noticed it was thicker. More of the gel shit that was covering their faces was trying to force its way through the stitches of her rain-soaked jeans, splitting the hem. She wasn't just shaking, she was convulsing. I heard a rumble in her guts. Then, a throat full of thick, viscous liquid poured out of her mouth, mixing in with the rivers of rain running across the pavement. Falk grimaced.
What the fuck is wrong with you two?
He reached for his phone. He was getting ready to call the hearse, but the guy moved forward, almost drunkenly, and fell into him.
Back up, motherfucker. You're giving a rash.
Falk forgot about the phone and reached for his piece, which he always kept concealed in his jacket pocket. Suddenly, the guy started vomiting out the same sizzling goop the girl had. It spilled onto Falk's Timberlands, eating through the yellow suede leather. I watched as Falk's eyes went wide, his face contorted in pain. Looking down, I noticed that the vomit had eaten through the leather of his boots. Now it was eating through his feet, skin peeling back from the bone like patches on a week-old sunburn. Steadying himself, Falk pulled out his gun, pointed it at the guy's head, and pulled the trigger. The blast was deafening. It split the silence of the alley. A flash of light erupted from the end of the barrel, dissolving into the falling rain like a quick lightning strike. The guy's head vaporized into a misty pink cloud, but no handgun I'd ever seen did that kind of damage. I realized that the bullet had only popped the swelling balloon that had been the guy's head. Out of the tree stump of his neck, the goop he'd been vomiting out bloomed upward. He fell back due to the gunshot, but more of the goo continued pushing through his neck stump like a mushroom in time-lapse. Falk turned on the girl, but she was already ready for him, and she'd begun changing. Her skin had stretched, like a garbage bag filled with a week's worth of unrefrigerated sludge. She was taking a new shape, similar to the guy Falk had just shot in the head. Her clothes began to sizzle away as more of the goop forced its way out of her pores, her nostrils, her eyes, her ears, and any other orifice it could. An amniotic gush blasted from between her legs like a burst pipe. Falk's eyes were peeled in terror. What had formerly been a 20-year-old girl had become a strange alien creature. It glowed in the darkness of the alley. It shot out two massive tentacles in a swift motion, a left and a right, and wrapped them around Falk's body in different directions. The sound of suction cups making contact. The tentacles constricted, snakes with a mind of their own. Falk would have screamed if he could draw a breath, but he was being crushed, becoming blue. His eyes on the verge of popping out their sockets. His bones, still covered by skin and muscle, made a series of muffled snaps. Falk's clothes had sizzled away too. Whatever the creature's arms were made of ate through the fabric and began sizzling through his skin like hydrochloric acid. Suddenly, the creature's arms ripped away in opposite directions. In contrast to the suction cup's pucking sound, I heard a machine gun series of cracks as Falk's spine twisted, then broke. I watched in slow motion as his skin unstitched itself, busting at the seams around his eyes, the corners of his mouth, the pit of his belly button. His frowning, crimson anatomy hung there for a moment, twin sheets of skin torn free from the ream of his body. Then the creature dropped him. The bottom and top hunks squelched onto the rain-slicked pavement. Behind me, the guy whose head Falk blew off, the creature he'd become, rose up, slithering over to its mate. I fell on my ass, backing away on my hands. They came closer. I looked into their strange, dead eyes, into an alternate dimension a billion light years from Earth.
That's all my last job.
Asaf Ilunata.
A strange language, something forbidden, something human beings weren't meant to hear. The words dug into my brain like parasites, coating my synapses with the same strange substance of which the creatures were made. I felt suddenly aged, like a block of cheese past its prime. In a few short seconds, I learned secrets of the universe that human beings are simply not meant to know. Ancient truths that shave time off your life just by knowing them. But by some divine stroke of luck, my head didn't explode. I waited for my death, and waited some more. But it didn't come. And when I finally opened my eyes, the creatures were gone. All that was left was the two halves of Falk's body and a trail of slime leading to a gutter nearby, not far from where we'd eaten our dinner an hour before. Reaching into the charred remains of Falk's jacket, I grabbed his phone. I did my best to avoid looking at his gory skeleton, at the rags of flesh that still clung to the few undissolved bones. I found a contact, the hearse. I called the number, and a man answered.
What is it?
Falk, I said. He's...
Be there in 5.
5 minutes later on the dot, the hearse pulled to a stop next to me, its headlights cutting through the dumping rain. The passenger window rolled down. A man stared out. He looked angry and inconvenienced, like I'd just taken a piss in his morning cereal. He leaned out and looked at Falk's body.
What the fuck happened to him?
There were 2 skells. The guy in the passenger seat nodded to whoever was sitting behind him. Doors on both sides of the hearse opened. 2 men got out. They opened the trunk of the car, got out some garbage bags, and quickly went about their work. Stuffing what remained of Falk's body into the bags, they cinched them shut, loaded them into the trunk, and got back into the car.
Go home for the night,
said the guy in the passenger seat.
We'll be in touch.
They gave me Saturday off, but I didn't sleep a wink. My apartment wasn't far from the harbor. All I could do was stare out the window in the direction of the alley where Falk had met his end. The language of the creatures echoed in my head. And as the words sounded, I experienced the same visions I had in the alley. Visions of faraway worlds, of horrifying truths, and the fate of humankind. I felt crushed under the weight of knowing. By the time Sunday rolled around, by the time I got the call from my employer, I'd pissed my pants 3 times, sweat through a dozen sets of clothes, and cried so much that my tear ducts dried up. In the years I'd worked with Falk, I'd seen a lot of scary shit. Junkies rotting in doorways, callous dealers murdering skells without remorse, dead prostitutes with slashed throats, stuffed into dumpsters like they were nothing more than errant trash. You name it, I saw it. But before that fateful Friday night, I'd always been convinced we were alone in the universe. Denizens of a rock floating in the middle of space, the only intelligent life. A biological accident hell-bent on killing itself and ruining the world in the process. I was wrong, and seeing the other things that lurk in the dark corners of our universe taught me the true meaning of fear.
You ready to go to work?
The call had come from an unknown number. It was my employer, who I'd never met. A woman. I always assumed Falk and I worked for a man. Go to work?
Those drugs aren't going to sell themselves.
What about Falk?
Who's Falk?
You know, the guy who was mentoring me. The one that got ripped in half in the alleyway by an alien creature. Despite all the things I wanted to say, I kept my mouth shut. I was scared by what I'd witnessed, but I also feared wronging the people in charge.
Oh, right.
said the woman.
Yeah, that was a real shame, but we need to keep up the supply. The harbor is one of our most popular locations.
The truth finally dawned on me. I was stuck in this line of work, maybe forever. What started as an innocent desire to earn a little extra money had turned into a career that would last until the day I died. Dealing drugs on behalf of powerful people wasn't the type of thing you retired from.
Oh, and if anyone asks for the sauce, we stopped selling it. Pitch them on our China White. We just got a new batch in. From my understanding, it packs a pretty good punch.
I showed up at the alley a few hours later. Rain was dumping down, just like it had been on the night Falk and I encountered the creatures. A kid was waiting for me, maybe 15 or 16, standing almost exactly on the spot where Falk had been ripped in half. The kid had a plastic lunchbox in one hand and a big, excited smile on his face. "My name's Richie," he said, sticking out his free hand. "Nice to meet you." I shook it. It was either clammy or slicked with rain, maybe a combination of the two. In either case, past the excitement, I saw that the kid was nervous as hell. "I'm ready to learn the ropes," said Richie. "I heard the other guy you worked with quit. I want to step in and do a good job." Falk quit. That's what they told the poor kid. They neglected to tell him that Falk had been ripped in half, and that they'd stuffed his body in garbage bags, which, I hazarded a guess, had since been submerged in concrete. It was just like Falk said. He'd told me that someday, if I kept up the good work, I'd get a promotion. I never imagined it would happen the way it did. That night, Skells came and went. A few of them asked for the sauce. I told them we didn't sell it anymore. I pitched the China White like I'd been instructed. A few took the bait. Others inquired about the rest of our stash. Everyone went home happy. It was like the sauce never existed in the first place. Dinner came around. The kid and I sat on the curb just like Falk and I always had. "Hope you like deli sandwiches," he said. "That's what's on the menu tonight. But you just tell me what you want going forward. I'll make it happen." As the kid chattered, and I ate mouthfuls of turkey, butter lettuce, and too much mayo, I thought of Falk. I thought about his love of peanut butter sandwiches, but I also thought about the gutter where the creatures had disappeared after killing him. I couldn't take my eyes off it. "You know it's not even true, right?" The kid had noticed me looking at the gutter. "It's just hippies being hippies." "What the hell are you talking about?" "The plaque," he said. "What it says. It's not true. Same as global warming being a hoax. Same as thinking recycling makes a difference. It's all bullshit that hippies come up with. They scare us into believing. They want to take over the world, that's what I heard." The kid must have sensed that I still didn't know what the hell he was talking about, because he stood up and beckoned me to follow him. I did. We came closer to the gutter. My pulse was pounding. I wanted to be as far away from it as possible, fearing what I'd see inside, but I couldn't help my curiosity. When we got close, I saw the metal plaque above the gutter the kid had told me about. "Like I said," repeated the kid, smiling smugly. "It doesn't, actually." "Oh, but it did. If you only knew, kid." The creatures had jumped in and headed home. Not to some far corner of the universe. No, they stayed right here on planet Earth. I saw that the plaque was etched with the image of a fish. It was also chiseled with 5 words. "No dumping. Drains to ocean." That was a long motherfucker. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Links to all my shit are down in the description. That was Peanut Butter and Jellyfish by Cal Ness. And I have a link to their subreddit down in the description too. My mouth is tired, and so that's about it. Be good to animals, even people. Sit.
Ja, snälla, Bergsbus, Rish. That was a long motherfucker. That was a long motherfucker.